takeaways from the game. As again, we're brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me, no contacts, no glasses. LASIK vision surgery did it for me. They're local doctors that can take care of you. Takeaways, Caleb?
Yeah, so we'll start with the standout one that we've just been talking about. Injuries is the biggest takeaway. So takeaways from the Tennessee-Mississippi State game, we're talking about 5 takeaways right now. The first one is injuries really stood out, and obviously Nico Iamaleava was the headliner. Tennessee did not bring him back in the second half after he completed 8 of 13 passes for 174 yards and 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. They didn't bring him back, but that's not the only injury they dealt with. As you know, Dave, Dylan Sampson went out for a good few drives. Mm-hmm. And there was a period where Tennessee was concerned that they would be without the Nico Dylan Sampson backfield for the rest of the year. But Dylan Sampson came back in the game. As we talk about this now, Josh Heupel says they expect Nico Iamaleava back against Georgia, so there should be no issues, but that obviously changed. Look, I'll just call it what it is. If Tennessee was fully healthy, they're probably beating Mississippi State 48-7,
easy
48-14.
Easy, which, by the way, my pick was 48-9. But nevertheless, all right, so what other takeaways do you have from this game, Caleb?
All right, so my next takeaway. With Tennessee injured and the passing game wrecked, Gaston Moore really benefited from Mississippi State's inability to not commit penalties. I don't know if you watched, but there were about 4 pass interference penalties they had. None of those passes would have been complete, Dave. They picked up those penalties because they were trying to stop it from happening, and Gaston Moore would not have completed any of them. So Mississippi State bailed out Tennessee a lot after Tennessee's injuries because they're so undisciplined and so bad of a football team.
Mississippi State's bad. At one point, I don't know if you saw this, but they were resetting their formation, and 2 of the guys, it wasn't technically in motion because they weren't set, but they're switching sides and they ran into each other. I think I did see that. I've never seen that before. 2 guys essentially going in motion, running into each other. That's a bad football team. And Caleb, I know you're high on their coach, Levy, but you should have your team forming at a more disciplined level at this point in the season. I got big questions about that hire moving forward after seeing them for an entire game. All right, another takeaway. What do you got, Caleb?
Before you go further, I give coaches that inherit a mess like Levy that are offensive minded with high minded offenses. You always get a year. You get a full year for your offense to be totally terrible. You're allowed that.
That's fine. But they were just really, there were some poor fundamentals across the board. But nevertheless, all right. What's next? What's our next takeaway?
Our next one is, and this is kind of a direct shot at Dave, so I'll just say it. Dave owes Max Gilbert an apology. Dave should come here, guys. Dave, and we just saw this on the message board, and I did say place kicking returned. That's my nice way. My takeaway is that place kicking is fine for Tennessee. My savage way to say it is Dave should come out here right now and stand up and applaud Max Gilbert. So, Dave, I would ask you to do that.
I'll applaud Max Gilbert. He did a fantastic job. I never doubted him for a moment. I just would have.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I would have held an open competition. All right. What do you got next on your takeaways?
Max Gilbert nailed a 51-yard field goal. Okay. Dave just needs to admit he was wrong. Next one is, honestly, and I want to know where you lean on this, Dave, because I'm a little bit mixed. Rush defense is kind of a mixed bag. I don't think Tennessee's defensive line did what it should have done to stop Devon Booth and Johnny Daniels in this game. However, at the same time, they did come away with 3 sacks. They did have 9 tackles for a loss, and 4 sacks. And Jason Jenkins had that strip sack. So I'll just ask you, do you lean more to, credit to them for the tackles for loss and sacks, or do you lean more they didn't stay home enough and they let too many big plays happen on the ground?
I thought Tennessee thought that they could get a good push with their front 4 and didn't bring pressure very often, and I thought that some holes opened up because let's face it. I mean, this was like playing a middle schooler. So you're going to occasionally, take some swats. Like if you're playing backyard basketball with a middle school, I mean, you're going to take some swats and maybe look stupid every once in a while, but this is your chance to go eat. So I don't hold that against them. And I don't think that's going to be a problem moving forward when they know that their opponent is a little bit better. I'm not sure that every opponent or every Tennessee player knew who they were going to play this week as late as last week. All right, who you got next, Caleb?
And as we say this, I just want to say that Missouri has officially beaten Oklahoma. Dave is very shocked, guys. Dave really thought Brent Venables was the offensive genius that could lead a game-winning drive with 30
Yes,
seconds
always. I'm a huge Venables on offense guy.
Yes. He if Dave could start a program tomorrow, he would have Brent Venables as his offensive coordinator and Billy Napier as his head coach. So that's where we're going
very
with this.
detail oriented. By the way, goings on in the SEC. In one case, you have the Florida head basketball coach that's accused of sexual assault, and then you have the Auburn basketball team that starts a fight on a plane and gets shut down by the FAA and forced to land in an emergency situation. What the world is going on with SEC basketball? All right, Caleb, what's your next takeaway?
All right, so my top one is fully healthy. Tennessee's offense fully came together. I mean, there's no way to look beyond that. Dylan Sampson was Dylan Sampson. I get he had another fumble. It, again, to me, was another fumble that wasn't his fault. It's the third straight fumble where he's being held up when he's trying to go down, and it's stripped out.
Well, that was a perfect hat on the ball fumble, but it's always the ball.
That's right. Helmet on the ball. Yeah,
it's always the ball carrier's fault when you fumble. Sorry.
It's not. You sound like Denzel Washington of Remember the Titans. Okay. So
I'm just sorry, it is.
So in Remember the Titans, Petey takes a toss and his blockers all miss, like they all miss blocks, and then he gets hit and fumbles. And Denzel's like, "Why'd you fumble?" He's like, "My blockers are bad." He's like, "Your blockers ain't got nothing to do with you fumbling the football." That's your take. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah. See, what I'm saying is, I think for the most part, the offense was complete. Dylan Sampson had 150 yards rushing. Nico would have had 350 yards passing had he not gotten hurt.
He wouldn't have had that many yards because he would have gotten sat in the middle of the third quarter. They were going to. And by the way, for those just tuning in, according to Josh Heupel, Nico was just held out of the second half for precautionary reasons and will be available next week.